Welcome to the Matt Bernier Show.
Friday, December the 3rd, 2016. It's the Matt Bernier Show. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. If you're watching on live.drf.com, thank you for doing so. If you're checking it out on Facebook Live, as far as the Daily Racing Form page is concerned, again, good on you. If you listen to this thing podcast version, YouTube, SoundCloud, drf.com, iTunes, however you want to find it, it's out there. Thank you for giving a little bit of time and giving an ear to this thing. Fresh off the layoff, we had the Thanksgiving break, obviously, last week, and we had some good racing. And that's kind of where we're going to start, ease our way back into things. But ultimately, as you can see over on the sidebar, if you're watching this version of the podcast, you can see that this is going to start to slowly transition into what everyone is starting to talk about this time of year, the two-year-olds. And we're going to still see some big performances from the older horses, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, now everyone has their eyes set. The Breeders' Cup is over. It's in the past. Now we're gearing up for the first Friday and the first Saturday in May, the Kentucky Oaks, Kentucky Derby. We'll dive into some two-year-olds in a little bit. Let's start off, though, just kind of weaning and easing our way back in from the holiday break and just go over a couple of the big races that we saw over the holiday. Look, the Cigar Mile was last Saturday. We had it on DRF Live. Dan Illman, Mike Beer, and then I came in afterward. Connect gets the job done in just a stirring stretch drive against Divining Rod. Really, really fantastic effort when you consider all things that this is still such a lightly raced horse. You got a 106 Beyer speed figure. There's actually an article on drf.com you should probably take a look at. Dick Girardi wrote about how the figures for the races at Aqueduct last Saturday, very difficult to make because the track appeared to speed up significantly as the day went on. This race was one of them that kind of tipped, or the real tipping point for the figure makers as far as the Beyer team is concerned, about maybe having to change the number a little bit simply because it seemed unrealistically high. So that's an article I would suggest to anyone if you're interested in seeing what goes into making figures and those sort of things in decision making. But Connect gets a 106 Beyer, beats Divining Rod. I would imagine Connect now at this point, the connections, Chad Brown, Paul Pompa owns this horse. Maybe they're looking to lease out a spot and get into the Pegasus World Cup beginning, or at the end of January, I should say, against California Chrome and Arrowgate. The Clark Handicap came the day prior. That was down at Churchill Downs. Gunrunner gets out there, shakes loose. The entire complexion of the race changed when Noble Bird missed the break completely. That allowed Florent Giroux to do the right thing and go to the front with Gunrunner. Gunrunner gets his Grade 1 victory. He gets it against Elders. And no coincidence that these two horses that win these first two races we talk about, Connect, Gunrunner, they ran 1-2 in the Pennsylvania Derby, which was a Grade 2 this year, and it has been upgraded. When it all comes out, when the full release comes out, you're going to find out that the Pennsylvania Derby will be a Grade 1 going forward. There are other races that have been downgraded. We're not going to get into that. Maybe we'll get into that next week. That's something else to talk about entirely. But the Pennsylvania Derby will be a Grade 1 this coming year. And the 1-2 finishers, they both beat older horses this past weekend. The Hollywood Turf Cup, the only winner that I had this weekend. I shouldn't say that, one of two. But Texas Rayano not going to break the bank for you. I thought the way that race was run, Ashley Love Sugar was forward with Gary Stevens. The minute Ashley Love Sugar and Texas Rayano took off at the same time, I knew Texas Rayano was going to be able to outfinish Ashley Love Sugar. I felt like maybe the tactics of the race initially should have suited Ashley Love Sugar a little bit more so than Texas Rayano. Unfortunately for any of the Ashley Love Sugar backers, that speed was sort of nullified. When you start your run at the same time as a horse like Texas Rayano, who can outkick you, you're going to be up against it. Texas Rayano gets the job done, a 104 Beyer. Gunrunner also, by the way, a 104 Beyer speed figure. Seabiscuit Handicap, that was on Saturday here on DRF Live. Ring Weekend gets a 106 Beyer. Graham Motion pushing all the right buttons right now. Barn is red hot. Everything he's sending to California is running. That could be very, very important this coming weekend. We'll talk about some of those races coming up tomorrow afternoon. But really, Ring Weekend, a cool horse. Honest horse, shows up, runs his race more often than not. He's been hurt throughout his career, so that's been the biggest problem, trying to keep him sounding on the racetrack. He gets a 106 Beyer in the Seabiscuit Handicap. And the Native Diver, Midnight Storm, maybe this is the second career for him going forward. He's going to turn 6 years old next year, I believe. And this was a race that was on the dirt, mile and an eighth, some questions. I picked him just because I thought he was controlling speed. Again, not one that's going to make you rich at 8-5, but the way that he did it, I understand he walked on the front end, but boy, very, very visually impressive, and the connections are already talking that maybe dirt is the way to go next year with him, or just at least see. You know you've always got the turf to fall back on. He looks like he could be the goods on dirt. He gets a 105 Beyer. Those were all the races for the older horses. The two-year-olds also sort of took the spotlight this holiday weekend. The Remsen, that was on Saturday. Motown gets an 86 Beyer speed figure. Again, that race was also part of the article that Dick Girardi wrote about. The Kentucky Jockey Club. These are the first two races for boys anyway, the Remsen for boys. The Kentucky Jockey Club, McCracken, unbeaten thus far, really looks like the goods down at Churchill Downs. He gets an 86 buyer winning the Kentucky Jockey Club. And then as far as the 2-year-old girls are concerned, the Demoiselle up here at Aqueduct, Miss Sky Warrior, gate to wire fashion, gets an 80 buyer speed figure. Goldenrod winner Farrell down at Churchill Downs also gets an 80 buyer speed figure in gate to wire fashion. The reason I talk about the 2-year-olds at the end here, we're getting to that point. Like I said at the top, we're trying to see who's going to be going toward the first Friday and the first Saturday in May, the Kentucky Oaks for the girls, the Kentucky Derby for the boys. And when we come back from break, I'm going to give you just my opinion. Doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's wrong. Just my opinion. The 5 best 2-year-old performances we've seen thus far. And guess what? We still have a month left in 2016. With these 2-year-olds, maybe somebody's going to jump up in a big way. There's still a couple of grade 1s left for them to be running down at Los Alamitos. But right now, my 5 2-year-old best performances of 2016 after the break, the Matt Bernier Show.
Imshawin, the winner of the Gun Handicap.
This horse is the complete package. He's won from 7 furlongs to 1.1 miles. He's won on dual surfaces. He's won with and without racing. And he's traveled around the world and brought his A game with him.
He showed that he was a very top-class dirt horse.
Balance is key, and he was just perfectly proportioned. I think that's what made him so athletic and so efficient on the track. Well, the amazing thing about Outwork was just how similar he is to Uncle Mo. I mean, right away of all of Rapoli's babies, he stood out as the most advanced, the most precocious, and the most talented, and that was exactly the same thing we'd seen a few years before with Uncle Mo.
Outwork wins it for John Velasquez.
To be able to win a grade 1 like the Wood Memorial in only his 4th lifetime start was very impressive.
It is Outwork in front. California Chrome, straight and strong. Absolutely sensational. California Chrome. California Chrome. Away to the Kentucky Derby. California Chrome wins impressively. He's gone into overdrive. California Chrome wins the Dubai World Cup. One of the greatest performances you'll ever see. Chrome turns to gold.
Texas Red, second best, and here is one talented colt named Speedster.
I would say Speedster is maybe one of the most exciting horses that I've trained. He was a grandson of Gone West. Another horse that I had trained named Elusive Quality from that line was a world record holder at Belmont Park. Speedster showed some of that same speed. When you'd ask him the question, he could answer.
One talented colt named Speedster.
12:08 on the East Coast, 9:08 the West Coast, the Matt Bernier Show here on DRF TV on live.drf.com. If you're watching live, if you're watching Facebook Live, watching this podcast version, YouTube, SoundCloud, DRF.com, iTunes, all sorts of different ways for you to find the show if you'd like to. Again, you can tweet at me, at Bernier_Matt. What we talked about at the top of the show, 2-year-olds. This is the focal point this time of year. We're trying to find out who's going on toward races like the Kentucky Oaks and the Kentucky Derby. As far as I'm concerned, doesn't mean that they're the fastest, doesn't mean that they're the flashiest or anything like that. Just my opinion. The 5 best 2-year-old performances thus far, boys and girls alike, they're all mixed in here. And I want to do it in reverse chronological order. So we're going to start at 5. And there are plenty of 2-year-olds that deserve to be on this list. But I'm just giving you my 5. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. Maybe I'll tweet it later. And I have all the PPs right here. Maybe I'll tweet all these out, some little PDFs for you. Let's start off with number 5. Number 5 is a little filly down in Southern California. Her name is Unique Bella. Unique Bella goes out for Jerry Hollendorfer. I got to be honest with you. I've been very impressed with both of her starts. Her first lifetime start, 5 furlongs. That was back in June at Santa Anita. And she was the talk of the town. She was bet down to 1-5. The problem for her that day was the race was at 5 furlongs. And you look at her pedigree. She's by Tappet. She's the first daughter of Unrivaled Belle. She's the first foal of Unrivaled Belle, who was a Breeders' Cup Ladies Classic winner in her own right. She wants every bit of distance. So, you know what? She got little hiccups, baby sort of things, a little nick and knock here and there. She misses some time. She comes back last week down at Del Mar, 6.5 furlongs, and boy, was she just fantastic. She won by 10 1/4 lengths. It's listed as a fast track. There was a little bit of moisture in the surface, though, that day. So I have to be honest with you, I'm pleased that she's at least shown that she can handle some sort of moisture because, again, if we're thinking bigger picture and we're going on to the Kentucky Oaks, no guarantee that the Kentucky Oaks is going to be run on a fast track. We all know that in spring in Louisville, not the most predictable weather. So Unique Bella, I think she's very, very interesting. She's one to obviously keep an eye on going forward for Jerry Hollendorfer. Number 4 is another filly for me, and this one, stunning. Stunning. Bill Mott with a 2-year-old early on, first-time starter, first-time winner. Winning for fun, by the way. This is a filly called Elate. Her dam is Cheery. She's out of Distorted Humor. And Medaglia d'Oro on top. This filly is bred. If you just look at the distance, pedigree would suggest that the longer is going to be better. She debuts at a mile, and she just absolutely waxes a field. She gets an 88 buyer. No Lasix for this filly yet either, and the money showed. She was bet down to 5-2 that day. This is a very, very interesting prospect, I think. And going forward, particularly on the East Coast, we haven't had that big flashy jump. We've had a couple of nice fillies on the West Coast, including Unique Bella, but we don't really have that slam dunk on the East Coast just yet. So Elate, I think she's got to be the leader in the clubhouse as far as the Eastern fillies are concerned. Again, Medaglia d'Oro out of a Distorted Humor mare. Bill Mott, she's in tremendous hands. She is number 4 on my list of the top 5 performances by a 2-year-old. Now let's get into some performances where we have a little bit of video to accompany. And guess what? We have another Bill Mott horse. I understand Good Samaritan didn't win the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. But based on the trip that he had, and you're not going to see it in the first part, but going into the first turn, there was another horse that essentially blew the turn. He was fanned about 10 wide. He was wide throughout. And we're going to pick him up at the top of the lane. Michael Rona, give us the call. But guess what? Michael, Good Samaritan, he doesn't get the job done. But you're going to wait and watch. He's on the outside making his move. Let's see it from the top of the lane.
To travel very deep past the quarter pole with 6 or 7 lengths to pick up. Oscar Performance, the new leader at the 3/16 pole, getting the head and now the body in front from the early leader, well abled. Then Lancaster Bomber and Good Samaritan running home well, but Oscar Performance is well clear. In second spot, Lancaster Bomber. And then Good Samaritan, but Oscar Performance has won it by a length and a half. Lancaster Bomber second, ahead in front of Good Samaritan, and Ticonderoga finishing furiously into the superfecta.
You know, when you consider the fact that this horse had all that trouble, and you saw I was still a little bit goofy with the lead changes, there's no reason to think that this horse isn't going to take a giant step forward with more racing. And Bill Mott had even considered this horse for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile to be run on dirt. I think they've got bigger things in mind for this one. And the way that he ran there, again, no knock against Oscar Performance or Lancaster Bomber. They could easily be in this top 5 list. And I think some people would probably take issue with the fact that I picked a horse that ran 3rd as one of my most impressive performances. But the fact that he was fanned so wide on the first turn, he was wide every step, he came with that big late kick at the end. He gives off the impression, I've always maintained, I don't love the Harlan's Holidays once they get out past, 8.5 furlongs or so. This horse gives off every indication that longer is going to be better. I think he's very, very interesting. He is the number 3 2-year-old performance for me thus far in 2016. Let's get to the top 2. One of them is a girl, one of them is a boy. Let's start off with Shane's girlfriend. She's the filly. She just most recently won the Delta Princess. Let's first, before I go any farther, let's start off with that. Don Stevens as they turn for home.
Flatter Up drops back, then Cajun Delta Dawn, and Forest Circle, but they're into the stretch. Shane's Girlfriend is just pouring it on through the stretch. What an impressive performance under Flavian Pratt. It's Shane's Girlfriend to demolish this field in the Delta Downs Princess. Cajun Delta Dawn was second, third went to Flatter Up, and fourth to Chanel's Legacy.
You're not supposed to be able to do that at a bull ring. You're not supposed to win by 13 1/4 lengths for fun. And I mean, again, this is a filly. She's just super, super exciting to me. It had taken a while for these girls to kind of pick up and catch up to the boys. The boys have all looked good as 2-year-olds. The fillies, it took some time. I don't even want to say that I really think the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies is one that we're going to be remembering as an all-timer. No disrespect to Champagne Room. Shane's Girlfriend, her debut when she went right out to the top and just blew away a field. And again, you got to keep in mind that field that day, okay, maybe she, hasn't flattered her as far as what's run behind her, but at the end of the day, she went to the front. Anybody else that was close to her on the engine, they ended up finishing up the track. The second and third place finishers came from last and second to last, and she still won by 5 and change. She goes down to Delta Downs, 2 turns for the first time, odd configuration, shipping cross country into the middle of the country, I should say. Boy, she takes on winners for the first time. There's so many things to like about this filly. She's in great hands with Doug O'Neill. I think Shane's Girlfriend, I think she's the leader as far as the Kentucky Oaks picture is concerned. And for me, she's the second most impressive 2-year-old performance by itself. That was in the Delta Downs Princess, I should say, a few weeks back. And let's get to the top one. There's really, I don't think there's any way that I couldn't give it to this horse, simply because of the things that he's accomplished. Now, look, he was a bit of a goofball earlier in his career, and I say early, he's only started 5 times. But boy, they put the blinkers on Mark and Norm Cassie. Classic Empire, he's just turned into a monster. He's going to be the champion 2-year-old. There's no question about it. And it was really kind of solidified on the heels of this performance in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile.
Joke getting up towards the inside within striking distance, swinging for home. 3 Rules are swimming in deeper waters today. 3/16 from home, and Classic Empire clear by 2.5 lengths to Not This Time, who's finishing on determinedly. He's wandering about just a tad. Classic Empire to the 16th, about 1.5 lengths. Not This Time is gradually wearing him down. Classic Empire, Not This Time. Classic Empire by a neck, Not This Time. They finished a street in front of the rest. Practical Joke was third, and looking at Lee from last into the Superfecta.
Great call from Michael Rona. You look at that race as it's come back. Unfortunately, Not This Time has been retired with a soft tissue injury, but you just look at the way that Classic Empire goes. And immediately after, I'd heard some people say that they thought, well, you know, Not This Time hung and Classic Empire was getting short. If you go and watch the entire replay and watch the gallop out, and I know it's a highly sort of, not controversial, but an area that some people believe in and some people don't. I'm a big believer in the gallop out. I understand you don't win races on the gallop out, but I like to think that there is something to it. You know, if a horse stops like they've been hit in the head right after the wire, that's a concern for me, particularly if we're talking about a 2-year-old trying to stretch out down the road. Mile and 16th, Classic Empire never let Not This Time go by, and I don't think it was a matter of that horse hanging. I think it was Classic Empire digging in. I almost feel like when he got as clear as he did turning for home, maybe he kind of idled a little bit. He's a baby still. He's figuring things out. And we saw up at Saratoga. He's got a mind of his own, and it seems like the blinkers, the small, the shortish cup, has really kind of sharpened this horse up and kept him to task. He's by Pioneer of the Nile. We know Pioneer of the Nile. He can get a couple of decent horses. I think you've heard of American Pharaoh. He was the sire of that horse. Classic Empire, there's no way that I couldn't give him the most impressive 2-year-old performance thus far. He earned a 102 buyer in that effort at the Breeders' Cup on Breeders' Cup Saturday. There's so much to like about this horse, and there's no denying. There's a lot of interesting and talented 2-year-olds thus far, but there's no denying that right now, Classic Empire is at the head of the list as far as the Kentucky Derby is concerned, and he's my #1 most impressive performance as a 2-year-old in 2016. We still have some time. Maybe somebody in the next week or so, or next 3 weeks, I should say, is going to jump up and surprise us. But until then, Classic Empire, he's the leader in the clubhouse for the 2-year-olds. We're going to take a break. When we come back, no more commercials after that. We're going to bring you right through. We're going to go over 3 races to handicap. We're going to go over the NFL picks. I was catching some heat from some people on Twitter. We're back. We're in the game, thick of it. And then we'll get you ready for DRF Live tomorrow afternoon starting at 3 o'clock Eastern, as well as the Friday Formulator Race of the Day from Laurel Park. Stay with us, The Matt Bernier Show.
Breeders' Cup Classic. Private Zone has run a 45 flat half mile and has opened up 2.5 lengths. Private Zone's got the lead close to home and he's all by himself. Private Zone wins the Forgo.
Say goodbye to your inner caveman. If you're making caveman bets on pick sixes, you could be leaving money on the table. DRF Bets Ticket Maker helps you build more profitable exotic bets and place them with one click. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticket Maker. Be a samurai with your ROI. DRF Bets Ticket Maker helps you cut out unprofitable exotic bets before they happen and be the master of profits. Raise your game with DRF Bets Ticket Maker, the exotic wagering app.
About 12:19 on the East Coast, 9:19 on the West Coast. Let's dive into a little bit of handicapping. We've got 3 races to go over. All 3 of them are going to be featured tomorrow afternoon on DRF Live here on DRF TV, starting at 3 o'clock Eastern. Myself, Dan Illman, will bring you through the entire card as Mike Beer has a much-deserved week off. He's enjoying some time with the family. Let's dive into these 3 races. Guess what? Tomorrow also happens to be opening day down at Gulfstream Park for the championship meeting. And as the sort of traditional opening day card, it's the Claim and Crown. So let's take a look at the Claiming Crown Jewel, that's going to be the first race we take a look at. For those of you that are new to this show, this entry card right here is not morning line odds or anything like that on the far side. Those are my odds. That's what I consider fair value on each one of these runners. And this is a fascinating race simply because you've got a horse like Bigger Picture in here who is arguably the class of this field, coming out of a graded stakes score up at Aqueduct in the Red Smith Handicap, but that was on turf. And he's going to be trying dirt in this spot like this. I don't want to find out at too short of a price. I think 4-1 is fair. I believe he's 4-1 also on the morning line. I think that's a fair number, but again, he's just a fascinating runner in a race that, you know, can go 15 different ways. There's no question to me the most likely winner is the 3 Royal Posse. All he does is show up and run his race. He's just a quality horse, total blue collar, shows up, doesn't matter if it's Florida, New York, wet, dry, anything else like that. He shows up and runs his race. I think he's the most likely winner. I think a live long shot is the other Mike Maker runner in this spot. That's the 2 Homespun Hero. I think most eyes are going to go toward Bigger Picture, but Homespun Hero for Mike Maker, I think stretching out shouldn't be an issue. You look at the pedigree on this horse, you got hard spun on top. I think there's some things to like about him at a big number, and I have to say, as we talked about in the actual stakes preview for this race, my actual pick in the race is John Jones, the number 7 horse. I pegged him at 7-2. I think he's got a big shot, but he's certainly not the most likely winner, and I can't call him a live long shot because I think he's going to come down from his 9-2 morning line. So he's my pick in the race, and hopefully he's going to be my bet if I get the number that I want. But at the end of the day, I think a live long shot is Homespun Hero, the 2, and I think the most likely winner is Royal Posse, the 3. Let's move out to the West Coast. Let's take a look at Del Mar, the Del Mar Thoroughbred Club. We've got 2 races we're going to take a look at. Race number 6 is the Bayakoa. Let's take a look at that field if we could. You've got a field of 8 signed on in here. For me, there looks like there's one horse who I think is the goods, and I think she could be serious next year as a 5-year-old. Keep in mind, she's a Southern Hemisphere 3-year-old, so now she's a 4-year-old technically. She'll be 5 here in a few weeks. That's the number 5, Veil Dory. I just think she's coming into this in raging form. 2 back. I don't care that she was embarrassed by, you know, Stellar Wind and Beholder, who came back to run 1-3 or 1-4 in the Breeders' Cup Distaff, and who knows, Stellar Wind may have been even closer had she not missed the break as badly as she did. I just think Veil Dory is way the horse to beat in this spot. I pegged her at 6-5. She's 7-5 on the morning line. I think she's far and away the most likely winner of this race. Live long shot. If Veil Dory was not in this race, I'd be all over Autumn Flower. I love the way that she's run in her 2 dirt races most recently. She has a beautiful late kick. She's obviously had some problems. She has quite a few layoff lines throughout her career, and maybe that's part of the reason she was on turf. Not just because she's by Flower Alley, but I just love everything about her. I think she's very interesting as a live long shot. I pegged her underneath. I picked her 2nd in this spot, and I think the fair number on her is 6-1, but Veil Dory far and away the most likely winner in my opinion. Let's move on to the Hollywood Derby, arguably the highlight of the racing weekend. No disrespect to our friends at Gulfstream, no disrespect to the Bayakoa or any of the other races we'll go over tomorrow afternoon on DRF Live. The Hollywood Derby is a tremendous race. You've got a field of 12 signed on in here. Let's take a look at that field if we could. Chad's got 3 in here. I think they're all live, with the exception, and I say vulnerable favorite. I think Camelot Kitten is a little bit of a vulnerable favorite simply because he always gets beautiful trips, and he's going to take money. I pegged him at 6-1. Of all the Chads, I think I prefer Annals of Time simply because he's so lately raced and we don't actually know what his ceiling is just yet. If you're looking for a vulnerable favorite, I think it is Camelot Kitten. If you're looking for a live long shot, you know, we talked about Graham Motion at the top of the show. Everything that he's throwing out is live right now. Hayabusa won. I don't know if he's going to be able to win this race. He looked tremendous. I know he was beating inferior competition at Keeneland in his first start in North America, first time Lasix, 4th start overall, but my goodness, he looked very good. Depends what you get for a number on him. I wouldn't take anything too short. I pegged him at 12-1. Maybe that's being a little bit overzealous, and he's going to be shorter than that, but I'm going to peg him as a live long shot. And similar to the Claiming Crown Jewel, I have to acknowledge that neither one of those horses is my pick in this race. My pick in the race is Free Rose. I do think there's a scenario in which he just goes right to the top and takes them the entire way, gate to wire. He's a tenacious little horse. I think he's got a big shot in there. I pegged him at 4-1. Those are the 3 races for this week, as we normally do if you're new to the show. Next week, for better or for worse, we'll go back, we'll recap them. Hopefully we pick some winners, maybe identify a vulnerable favorite or 2. Now let's dive into the Week 13 NFL Trifecta. Catching some heat earlier on in the season. Oh, your picks are terrible. Well, I said we're just trying to crawl back. You got to keep in mind, 52%, and you're winning. You're beating the juice. How do you get to 52%? You know, normally it's a 10 to 11 sort of payoff, that deal. If we're trying to make money at plus 110, 11 divided by 21, that comes out to 52.38%. 52%, we're going to round down to that. So that's what we're trying to get to. And as you can see right there, the updated year-to-date, 15 and 15. So we're getting close. Week 13, Philadelphia Eagles at the Cincinnati Bengals. The Eagles are a mess right now. They're on a bad losing streak, as well as the Bengals. Guess what? Whether A.J. Green plays or not, and obviously if he plays, the number would certainly go up from there. They'd probably be favored. I just don't think the Bengals, I've never loved them, and they've gone back to being the Bungles this year. Marvin Lewis is going to get fired. He has to get fired. But at the end of the day, I mean, is there really that much separating these two teams? I would rather side with the home team in this spot that's catching a point. I know it's basically a pick-em. But, look, 1 point can go a long way. Give me the Bengals at home +1. San Francisco 49ers lost a tough one last week down in South Florida when they took on the Miami Dolphins. They're catching a point at the Bears. I think the Bears are terrible. Matt Barkley, look, he wasn't bad last week, but just as a whole, I don't have any faith in the Bears. And look, if you want to take them as a 1-point favorite at home, good on you. I'm going to take the 1 point for the 49ers. I just think overall they've been playing better. And politics and whatnot aside, Colin Kaepernick has actually been playing pretty good football. So if he continues on the way that he has against a much worse team than the Chicago Bears than what he faced last week, and he almost beat the Dolphins on the final play of the game, give me the 49ers +1 point at the Chicago Bears. And the last one, this is going to make Craig happy. The Indianapolis Colts at the New York Jets. The Jets are catching 2 points at home. I've got 3 dogs for you. All of them are catching points. The Jets, I don't understand. Look, if Andrew Luck plays, even if he does play, are the Colts really that good? I mean, I understand that the AFC South, they're right in the thick of it, but that's not a positive. That division's terrible. The Jets, they're not good either, but at the same time, they played the Patriots very, very well last weekend, but they always play them tough. It's just one of those divisional games. AFC East, you're always going to have barn burners. Catching 2 points at home, I don't think they're that much worse than the Colts are. And look, if for some reason it's Tolzien again for the Colts instead of Andrew Luck, I don't know what the latest news is there. That number shouldn't be +2. It should probably be -2. So give me the 2 points on the Jets at home. A quick recap. Give me the Bengals +1 at home against the Eagles. The 49ers +1 at the Chicago Bears. The New York Football Jets, not the Football Giants, Football Jets, +2 at home against the Colts on Monday night. Let's get you ready for DRF Live. Starting tomorrow, 3 o'clock Eastern. This is the Saturday slate of races that we will be bringing you. Myself, Dan Illman, we've got a lot of good stuff coming for you. Obviously, it's opening day down at Gulfstream Park. We've got a couple of stakes races for 2-year-olds at Tampa Bay Downs. They just opened up a week and a half ago. Stakes race from Golden Gate, and then obviously a couple of gradeds out west at Del Mar. Again, we start at 3 o'clock Eastern. We're going to bring you right through the entire day. Myself, Dan Illman, will bring you through all sorts of good stuff going coast to coast here on DRF Live. And we're actually stunning for the first time, I think, ever. I'm a little bit short. Got about 2 minutes to go, and I'm not going to try and stretch this thing out. We're just going to cut a little early. We'll hopefully pick some winners tomorrow on DRF Live. Again, right here, live.drf.com, starting at 3 o'clock Eastern. If you're new to this show and you're watching it on live.drf.com, thanks for doing so. If you want to catch it on podcast, YouTube, SoundCloud, drf.com, iTunes, all sorts of different ways for you to find the show. We'll be back every Friday, noon Eastern. Probably going to get a little bit wonky here as we get closer to the holidays and I have to go back up to New England. But at the end of the day, this is the usual schedule, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Without further ado, we'll get you ready. You got some good racing still to come today. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We've got good stuff tomorrow, but we also have good racing today. This is the formulated race of the day for Friday, the 8th race at Laurel Park. Best of luck this weekend. We'll talk to you next Friday.